Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will read the updates to close the story of a man whose girlfriend cheated on him. And when he dumped her, she lost her relationship with him, her best friends, and even her apartment. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I highly recommend watching it on our channel first to fully understand the story and its progression. Let's get started. Update 2, a clarification on the last update. I wasn't clear about what I saw when I walked in. They weren't literally effing, they were just sitting on the couch with a deer in headlights look that was incredibly incriminating, and they both went quiet. It was just obviously not a, hey, guess who dropped by kind of situation. Anyways, on to the update. I've been extremely busy with the semester ending, and I took the majority of advice to bury my head and work. I've spent a lot of time at the library because Alexis never goes there. In the process of posting the last update, I realized how dumb it was that I hadn't contacted Derek and Brooke with my side. I screenshotted the text from the cool neighbor. Side note, all names have been changed except Mark because F you, Mark. Within the minute, Derek was blowing up my phone with calls and texts that made it very apparent he didn't know anything. At the same time, Alexis was sending texts begging me to meet up with her. I was feeling miserable and sent back a single text to Derek saying I wasn't feeling up to talking, then put my phone away for the night. In the morning, I got a text saying to meet him at my favorite restaurant for dinner and drinks on him, assuring me that no one would be there, not even Brooke. I haven't had any appetite since everything went down, but the offer meant a lot, and I really did want to see him, so I decided to go after class. I got to the restaurant first, and I had my heart in my throat, worrying that Alexis would somehow be there, but she wasn't. Derek came up to me and gave me a big hug and opened with, "Dude, what the F?" So here's where crap gets a bit crazy and dramatic. A lot of you suggested that Brooke might side with Alexis, or had been covering up for her the whole time. I wasn't so sure because while she is closer to Alexis, she and I have been friends for a bit longer. According to Derek, as soon as he told Brooke, she was absolutely furious. In his words, I sort of wanted to F Alexis out. But Brooke took care of that and then some. Remember how I said Alexis came from a conservative small town? Her parents had no idea that we were living together, and she constantly stressed that they couldn't know or they'd cut her off financially. They liked me enough to be polite, but they were constantly worried a relationship would distract her from school and didn't want her getting pregnant or whatever. Derek said that Brooke demanded Alexis pack her things and find a new place, or she'll call up her parents and tell them everything. Derek told me that later that night, Alexis was sitting in the living room hugging a sweater, right left behind, and wailing at the top of her lungs that her life was over. When Brooke yelled from her bedroom, "Well, maybe you shouldn't have effed Mark," imagining that moment was kind of funny. Brooke's always been a very no-nonsense girl with a hot temper, but I definitely didn't expect this. It was extremely touching that she took the cheating that seriously. During that dinner, all my fears that I'd lost my friends were completely washed away, and I was able to choke down a few pieces of sushi. When we left dinner, Derek promised to let me know when Alexis was gone so I could move back in. I declined his offer because, one, even if she does move out, everything in that apartment reminds me of her, including Derek and Brooke. Two, Alexis and Mark probably effed in my room, so I really don't want to sleep in it. And three, in the current emotional state I'm in, I don't want to be third-wheeling a happy couple, even though I'm sure they'd be considerate. He understood my points, but said to let him know if I changed my mind because Brooke and Alexis's friendship seems to be pretty over. This week has been pretty uneventful, but I keep having to dodge Alexis. Luckily, I'm in an undergraduate program that only has 60 students. I asked two friends to keep an eye out for her after telling them the story and started showing up to class at the last minute. As far as I know, she only waited outside one of my classes. I got a text saying she has been spotted in front of that classroom. Waterworks are in progress. Proceed with caution. I ended up skipping that class because I didn't know if she was going to leave, and I really didn't want to risk it. Later that night, she sent me a really long Facebook message explaining everything from the beginning, and it sort of made me sick to read. I contemplated not reading it, but once I opened it, I just had to. She said that he'd been flirty with her in the halls, and she tried to be friendly back. But it must have come off as flirting, because he kissed her mid-sentence one day. She said she felt guilty that she led him on, and that Guilt prevented her from shooting him down in future advances because she felt like it was her fault it happened, and she has trouble saying no. Huh. She said they'd only slept together 3 times and she hated it. And she was going to end it during the conversation I walked in on. She said she understood if I needed some time and some space, but that she'd do absolutely anything to make it right and would spend the rest of her life making it up to me by treating me like a king. I'd never have to cook, clean, or do my laundry again. Give me full access to her phone and passwords. She even suggested we install Live 360, an app that allows you to track someone's location through their phone, so I would know where she is at all times. Cut off all contact with Mark and all her male friends, just for good measure. I guess makeup sex whenever I wanted. Yeah, that sounds like a healthy relationship, right? I didn't answer. I kind of wanted to keep her on Facebook and watch the crap show unfold. She was posting dramatic statuses and song lyrics about mistakes and forgiveness, and some from our song. But I know how I am. I don't want to compulsively check her page and go through old photos, so I blocked her. Derek sent me a text a few hours later saying she's crying and screaming about me blocking her. In happier news, the family I'm staying with is fantastic. I felt a little guilty about taking up their space, electricity, etc., so I offered to put down rent and pay for some bills. I am unemployed, but my family gives me a decent allowance for rent and food. But they declined. The dad said first month's free if you need more time here, then we'll talk about it, and winked. My friend was telling me that they have hosted his and his sister's troubled friends, so it wasn't a big deal. Still, I'm unbelievably grateful. As for the awesome neighbor, I called him to thank him for everything. He told me that Mark has been unusually quiet the past few days and, told another one of the guys that he had gotten dumped. Whatever, I don't want to think about it. I sent Brooke a message thanking her for kicking Alexis out, and she said she'd do it regardless of whether or not I moved back in. She's going to give me a heads up on when Alexis is gone so I can get the rest of my things. In the meantime, I'm spending a lot of time studying, applying to grad schools, and hanging out with the guy I'm living with. I'm going to wait until after finals to tell my parents about the situation, because my mom asks a million questions about everything, and I'm not in the mood to answer them. Final update. Once finals ended, everything hit me like a ton of bricks. I removed all my social media pictures with her, threw out stuff that reminded me of her, and took our songs off my playlist, yada yada. We've been inseparable since we met, so this was over 2 years of accumulated memories. Long story short, it was very hard, but I had an urge to get it all done quickly. Anyways, one particular Redditor sent me a message about how Alexis might be driving to dangerous thoughts now that she's lost everything. Her closest friends, her boyfriend, her apartment. I know that seems like an overdramatic prediction, but I couldn't get it off my mind after reading it. What Alexis did was absolutely freaking terrible, but I felt like a final conversation might give me better closure and maybe help her understand that it's completely over and get her to move on. So I sent Alexis, if you want to talk, we can meet up somewhere, but there's no way we can be together after what happened, so please don't ask, okay? She responded almost immediately asking when and where. We arranged to meet at an off-campus coffee place. When I got there, she was already at the table and got up to hug me. I waved her away and she jerked back. I felt crappy immediately, but I wanted to get it over with. She asked how I'd been, how finals, etc., but I sort of interrupted. I asked her if she had been unhappy with our relationship. Her eyes got real wide and she said, no, a bunch of times and got quiet. So I asked her why she did it if she wasn't unhappy. Basically, she retold the story about having trouble saying no and him being so pushy. I stopped her and asked her to cut the BS and just take responsibility. That maybe it excused her actions up until he kissed her mid-sentence, but sex 3 times? Yeah, no. She looked down, shrugged, and muttered, "You're right, I know." She started tearing up and said she was so sorry that I'd never understood how sorry she was. Then she asked if there was any chance we could be together again, which I kind of was expecting, even though I told her not to. I just shook my head. I told her she could still live with Derek and Brooke if she wanted to, but she declined, and told me she already had plans to move in with another girlfriend of hers from here on out. Now, the conversation went in circles with her, trying to explain away her actions with her difficulty turning down guys due to her fear of being seen as a frigid bee, and me trying to get her to admit that excuse was garbage. I don't know why, I just really needed her to stop using that crutch and admit she had ruined a perfectly good relationship with a very real future all on her own. But she just wouldn't. She was always stubborn. Finally, I let it go, and we parted ways somewhat amicably. As I was leaving, she grabbed my hand and parted her lips to say something, but ended up shaking her head and letting go. The conversation made me feel worse than I had before at first, but ultimately it really made me see that she was never the kind of person I wanted to be with. Even without the cheating, she never took responsibility for anything. Failed classes were because the professor was incompetent. Not finding a job or internship was bad luck, and not her lack of effort, etc. I just never really thought about it too hard. I leave the coffee place and asked Derek to hang out. I ended up going to the apartment, and although Brooke was there, she mostly stayed in her room. We drank some beers and played some video games. It really cheered me up. We also talked a bit about everything that happened. He admitted that they hadn't been able to find a third roommate, aside from complete strangers they'd rather not move in with, and asked me again to stay with them. I could tell he really wanted me to, and I felt guilty about them being stuck with the lease, so I accepted. I told him I'd wait until Alexis took all her things, though the furniture is hers from before I even moved in, and I still don't want to sleep in that bed. Life isn't perfect now, but I'm doing better. Alexis moved her crap out. I bought a second bed and dresser from another student. I had my first round of classes last week, and although I'm going to sound like a total nerd, the courses are really cool and hands-on, and the professors are incredibly cool people. Derek and Brooke have been really supportive, and don't make me feel like a third wheel at all. I saw Mark in the hallway once, and he totally ignored me, and I ignored him. But the urge to punch him in the face was very real. I guess that's something that will go away over time, and that's the end of this story. What do you guys think? Do you have anything to say to the poster? Let me know in the comment section below. And I will see you guys on the next video.